All right, 3, 2, 1. All right, welcome back. We are here, Smooth Thoughts.
Yo, what's up?
It's been a while. This is your host, Chimp, and of course, the illustrious, the fantastic, the magnificent.
John here. Yeah, I took a vacation.
You took a vacation. Yeah, man, I missed you. It's been a while.
I got COVID, and it was that long COVID made me fucking, I don't know. I couldn't think. It was weird.
Yeah, it's a bit of a doozy, but glad you're back. I'm glad to see you're in good form.
No, yeah. I'm glad we're back on the airwaves.
I missed it, man. It's fun.
Yeah. So I guess wanted to talk about quasi particles today, but how was your time in the summer? Anything interesting happen? Was anything
Summer? What does that mean? Oh man,
the past couple of months?
We're not kids anymore, so summer means something different. But no, actually, I started working a different position at my current job, so it's actually pretty chill now. So, but yeah, no. Other than that, I've just been podcasting a lot. I just
awesome.
I still do my other podcasts, Minor Details with my buddy Marcus. A lot of music, video games, stuff like that. Then I started doing something else with my friend Captain Brunch, and we do like a live thing every Saturday night. So I hope you guys check that out. But other than that, man, I've been good. Just living life.
We'll post links. We'll post links to your
in
other
the show notes
situations. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I finally got my thoughts together. I wanted to do this one about quasi particles. Sounded like a fun topic, and also just kind of like other things going on with them that kind of led me to when I was doing the research that was kind of unexpected, but
yeah, like it's really weird. Like I never heard of quasi particles, so it's definitely a new thing for me. But it seemed really interesting. But I don't know.
Yeah, it is definitely hard to wrap your mind around because, like, I guess to put a definition down, quasi particle. When you look at a elementary or a fundamental particle, I guess they're characterized by existing within a certain domain of quantum mechanics that allows us to interact with them. And then in very special circumstances, you'll get certain things that are sort of de facto particles that you can treat them as such, and it's useful to treat them as such, but they're not actually a material particle like the other ones that we're familiar with, like electrons and protons and stuff.
Yeah, it's so weird.
One of the easiest ones to think about is the phonon, which is a sound wave, which kind of like a photon, which is a light wave. A phonon, I guess they say can be sort of treated like a particle, but we just understand it as the movement through the medium of air.
Right. Everyone knows what sound is, but like, how can you really describe it from like a not a physical, but like a physics sense? It's just literally movement through air, like you said.
Right. And so one oscillation can be considered a single packet, a single quasi particle. There's a whole list of weird ones because you just get all sorts of strange behavior when you create really specific circumstances. And if you go, like, even from the phonon, there's what they call an oscillon, which is just a single vibration in any medium.
What does that mean?
Sound is the vibration of the air hitting our ears, which I think technically means that a phonon is also an oscillon because it's just one of those. And then you can say like a gravitational wave, an oscillation of the
boson
space-time kind of falls under sort of the oscillon. The oscillon is like sort of the most vague, all-encompassing, like sort of quasi-particle. And they're weird because like they kind of exist within one another too, because the word quasi itself kind of means it's so open to like how it can be defined. Another really weird one is has a lot to do with transistors. And it's actually used a lot in like the design of like computer transistors. It's called an electron hole.
Oh.
And that's just when, you have an electron moving as a current. Sometimes, maybe in like, just to make up something as an example, maybe like in a matrix of electrons, you can actually like do a trick, and instead of an electron moving around, it's actually a hole, an empty space within the electrons that moves around as if it were its own particle.
That's interesting.
And that's taken advantage of in a lot of like circuits.
So it's
nowadays.
It's like in a sea of electrons, you have like a space that's just moving around like it's its own
and
thing.
It acts as like a particle, but it's just a hole in the electron sort of soup.
Like a ghost particle.
Yeah, that's kind of what a lot of these are like. It's interesting because a lot of people don't talk about them at all. Like, I think it's a combination of like just the intimidation of such an esoteric like idea, and also they're so theoretical and really can't even be proved because they're not material. So I think scientific people are very hesitant to talk about anything that they can't say with like complete surety.
Yeah, there's a lot of space for speculation.
Yeah.
But we all love to speculate.
Yeah. Very weird. And the list goes on and on. There's all sorts of ones. Maybe I'll pull up a list. Just trying to think of ones off the top of my head. There's the Anyon, which is sort of the star of the moment because that's what they're using to design quantum circuits.
Okay, yeah. So I was going to say, so like these quasi particles sound really interesting and weird, but like how are they used?
So for the most part, I feel like they're difficult to actually use in any concrete sense because they're so theoretical. But so the Anyon is one that is actually being used. Pulling up a list here, and I'll link to the list too.
And then how, I mean, phonons. Obviously, we interact with sound
right
every day, and it's something that our brain obviously evolved with because it's something it's able to work with and manipulate to an extent. But I wonder if our bodies are able to work with these other quasi particles, or maybe we're interacting with them in ways we don't even realize.
Yeah, exactly. Like it reminds me of the Wolfram model where like you have parallel instantiations of systems interacting with one another, all in parallel. So what we like, we enjoy the phonons because we are listening and hearing everything, but there's probably like fractional quasi particles that also are a huge part of our existence that we have no idea, because we can't even wrap our brains around it. You've also got the magnon, which is a individual like quanta or packet or wave of magnetism. A plasmon is an excitation of a plasma. And these are all under really specific circumstances. You get, those are actually pretty like a phonon, it moves through air. But so the Anyon right now is, it's a quasi particle that only exists in 2 dimensions. And so they do that by creating like a small circuit that uses like lasers, and there's different ways of doing it. Lasers and superconductors to, and then it has to do with like quantum tunneling. So it's kind of like they give the electrons a way to exist, and it confines them to 2 dimensions, so to say.
Kind of like caging them in.
Yeah, they're caging them in this very convoluted quantum dynamic-y way, like the way that people love to do. We'll create a whole experiment where it's like, okay, now the circumstances are just right so that you don't really exist as an electron anymore. You exist as this sort of like quantum halfway state almost. Right. And so it becomes an Anyon, which only exists in 2D. And because of that 2D thing, it does a particular, it has this particular characteristic where, let's say there's 2 of them. And so I think a single, I don't know what they call it, but a single maybe circuit or something, fermion. There's these 2 anyons, and sometimes they'll like shift position. And by shifting position, since it's only in 2D, it inscribes information in a way where 3D wouldn't. Because in 3D, if you shift two things and switch their positions, in 3D, what happens is they're kind of like they're just switching, but you can't really derive much information from that. Unless you recorded it with a camera or something, and then you can go back and derive that information. But with the anyons in 2D, kind of like the camera idea, as they're switching across time, they're creating braids that are actually stored within the whole of this quantum like function. So they say they have like this memory. And so as a so they call that topological quantum circuit. Microsoft is putting a bunch of money into it right now. They're really excited about it. I mean, all this is still theoretical and nobody's been able to do it.
But there's a lot of money going into it.
But there's a lot of money going into it. And I mean, these are really interesting, and I, you can see why people are getting excited. Because these braids, they allow for a quantum circuit that's a lot more stable than the other ones, because the braids, I guess, being that they're topological, they're really resistant to outside noise, which is the huge problem with trying to build a quantum circuit, is outside noise coming in and destabilizing everything, and you lose your information.
Gotcha.
But using these braids, these topological braids, they're far more stable in being able to retain information. So they're trying to make that work for them.
Okay. So it's basically this is like the new version of quantum computing, because I didn't realize that there are already quantum computers out there, but it seems like they're very basic, or very, they work better at just lab conditions.
Yeah, I think it's that there's a certain amount of qubits you need to get to before they're really useful. And we're slowly inching our way up, because the more qubits that are being put into a circuit, the more susceptible they are to outside noise and destabilization. Gotcha.
It's like a house of cards. The taller you build it, the more likely a little blow of wind is going to just drop everything.
Yeah.
So we have to make those cards stronger.
Yeah, and I mean, there's the possibility that, the closer we get to this so-called magic number, the harder it is to, stop outside noise from destroying. There might be a limit there. Who knows? We don't know until somebody gets it right. But it's interesting, these anyons and these braids that they're thinking about, they actually, it's a funny parallel to this old Incan tradition where they used knots as a language. And so the comparison between even the quantum circuits and the way that the Inca used to use these knots is that, let's say you wrote something on a piece of paper and, you used ink. If a hurricane hit, that piece of paper would get torn to shreds and lost, and that information would get lost. It's so delicate. Whereas if you have a rope with braided knots, that could withstand a hurricane. That topological information is very, it's sturdy.
It's resilient. Absolutely.
It's resilient. Yeah,
I believe it was called Quip, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, that's how they would do their accounting, like different braids. It's kind of like an abacus, but using braids instead.
Yeah. Very
interesting idea, and like you said, it's very resilient, because no matter what, you could throw it in your bag or run down the street, it's still gonna it's gonna keep its shape until you change it itself. Very cool. And I'm sure it's cheap. It's rope, it's not like you're making metal or something. It's freaking rope. So I'm sure there was plenty of rope in the old days and even now.
Yeah. And kind of similarly with the particles, like it's just a twist. It's kind of like just twisting things in sort of like an abacus. It's sort of like a quantum abacus.
That's really cool.
Quantum braid abacus. Yeah. Fun idea.
Yeah, taking what's the word? Being inspired from the by the past by old ideas. It always reminds me of music. You know, listen to a different music and be inspired to make something new out of it. It's kind of like the same thing there. Taking old concepts and applying them to new dimensions, new materials, new tools.
Yeah, and there's so many other like when you say materials, like when it comes to like these quasi particles, there's like so many different splinters in the study that go into like materials and this really interesting stuff called like liquid crystals, which I could find really little information on that. Looks interesting. I'll post a bunch of links in the video description.
It's probably behind a paywall, huh?
Yeah. Actually, some of the papers that I was looking for, they were behind a paywall. So
yeah, I mean, yeah, Microsoft is putting a ton of money into it, but also mean that they're going to own a lot of this stuff, and they may or may not want to put the information out there.
yeah. That's also what I figure. You know, why people don't talk about these quasi particles too much is because maybe it's kind of like people are like, "Whoa, this is like." Kind of a gold mine here, and maybe we don't want to talk about it so much.
Company secrets, because someone else, Google or whoever, will take advantage. Yeah?
Definitely, yeah. You've got like materials, so much weird stuff, the implications of these things, and something I really like about like kind of like the school of thought, and from the lectures that I've seen, is the quasi particle people. They have this, I feel like, feeling that I enjoy where they're like, we want to undo the whole paradigm of elementary particles. Like everything is basically a quasi particle. Like us as humans, we're sort of like a quasi particle in that like, they're another kind of important facet of it was that like, if you're measuring like gas in a room, quantum equations are never going to help you learn about the gas that's in a room. Only molecules will, right? So it's kind of like each tertiary level that you like are observing in is totally isolated from the level below it or above it, which is what makes up that level. There was another example that like, you won't learn anything about the economy by studying human red blood cells.
Right.
Even though that's what drives us and powers us and we power the economy, they're just completely separate. So the notion of particles in themselves is kind of falls under the umbrella of quasi particle, because everything is kind of just a quasi element that is completely dependent on the medium and or material that it's in.
No, that makes sense. So it looks like the standard model of quantum dynamics may not be around for long, or it'll expand and just encompass a bunch of other things,
Yeah, I mean the zoo of quasi particles keeps getting bigger and bigger, but it doesn't. They don't have the exclusive privilege of being part of the elementary particle club.
Yeah, exactly. A club. They were there first, or rather, they were worked on first.
They have that OG status that can't be questioned.
And a professor in college once told me, like, it's not that, like, one of the biggest reasons why we don't know so much about any field of science is just that there's not enough people to do the work. So wherever the money is concentrated or whatever people are interested in, that's where you're going to find the most knowledge. If there's some other facet that could be, there's a lot we could learn there, but if there's no one to actually do the work and actually, do the research and everything, it's going to be a while till we figure anything out.
Yeah. And these are especially odd in that, like, it's hard to tell if they're even real, but people are still pouring money into it. Because there's experiments that have sort of like shown particular kinds of anions actually exist. But at the same time, there's the people who say you're not really proving that they exist. You're proving that under these circumstances, the behavior of this system is predictable by how you're saying, but you can't say that these particles have been proven to be existed because they're not particles.
Well, look at apparently the Higgs boson they first saw it in 1973 when you super froze helium, but then it was actually discovered 40 years later. So that's crazy.
Yeah, this kind of stuff's probably going to take us hundreds of years to start unraveling the tiny little minutia of all these simulated worlds and simulated particles.
And I think that also, like, like we were saying, like there's the lab conditions where we, take an electron or take any sort of particle and make it do a certain thing. But in the real world, it's not really like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like that thing where, what are we really proving? This thing exists, but are we able to even like use it or manipulate it?
Yeah,
under what conditions?
Kind of speaks to why those quantum computers always look like a crazy chandelier out of like Tron or something. Because it's like all of that machinery is, I feel like, mostly going into making it cold.
Yeah.
It's like all pointed towards the circuit and just like doing the work to basically create that super cold environment where those effects can start expressing.
And I'm sure it's expensive. I mean, to keep it at a very low temperature for a long time. I mean, at a small scale, it's, not a big deal. But when you start getting to like larger computers.
No, yeah, extremely expensive. And they can't even keep it up for very long. It's just like a few seconds at a time.
Geez.
Yeah, it's in such an infant state. There's so much. I mean, it's going to take a long time too, probably like 10 years before you see anything really interesting start happening. But I kind of think one of the first uses of that kind of technology will be like visual media, I think like virtual world rendering would benefit a lot from that sort of super fast, I guess, like computation.
Yeah, computations. Yeah. So then that's one of the main advantages then, it's just super, super fast.
It's fast in like a different way. It's not just that it can do things at a really high rate, but it's that it can do, I guess, theoretically many things at once and derive an efficient way to move forward. So that's why it makes me think that it would be good for world building, because you'll be able to have like really, really high definition physics engines.
Yeah, a lot of things moving in parallel at once, very quickly. That's cool.
Yeah, it's definitely a long time from now, but fun. So yeah, these guys in the quasi particle community, right? I just love that they're kind of just like, we want to throw it all away, like there's no, and I feel like it reminds me a lot of like Hoffman and Wolfram. It's like these things, like we're sort of feeling our way in the dark towards this thing where we don't have to just put our faith in the boundaries that our senses give us anymore. Like we can kind of understand that there's this like medium of mediums, and that all has within it systems that are halfway overlapping and augmenting one another.
Right. Crazy.
Yeah, fun thoughts. I think we might be close to closing out. Have any thoughts?
Oh man, I don't even know. Like I try to think of like what people thought of like 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, and did they imagine this? Or were everything, all their assumptions wrong?
Well, the thing is, I kind of feel like it's almost like we haven't gone anywhere, because really, like, we've uncovered a few layers of the onion, but we keep getting the signal that it just keeps going. Once we uncover the layers of one onion, we've got more layers to go. So it's kind of like, have we gone anywhere? Like, were their assumptions wrong? I kind of don't think so, because it's like, if you have your boundary and your globe, your snow globe, and you have your quasi particles within that snow globe, and it works for your qualia, for your enjoyment, for whatever it is you're after. I mean, if that boundary opens up later, I actually don't think it means what you used to think was wrong. I just think that means that you're in a different medium now. That just means that things are different.
Things are different, yeah.
Yeah, I really don't see it even as that, like, people 5,000 years ago, you know, like, may have been misled. I mean, we're misled. Half of these things are going to end up being, you know, not correct.
Yeah, what is truth 5,000 years ago versus now? It's a completely different, like, playing field.
But I think they're both probably, in some ways, closely equally correct and incorrect.
I mean, you know, people survived. I think that's one of the main points, right? To survive. And we're still here, so.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that is the main point that's
at least biologically
stimulating
speaking.
enough, right? Yeah, that we, like, it's the one thing that we really, like, I'm like, we need to survive. We need to maintain this, like, nice entropic niche we've got going. The quality is really, really nice here. There might be an infinite, endless stream of universal, just like interactions in hypergeometric space, but if you can't pick out the nice qualia from it,
what's the point?
Yeah, it's probably not that enticing.
Yeah, we're good here. We're good here. Yeah.
Step out every once in a while though, and take a taste of what's out there.
Enjoy the view. Yeah. All right, cool. So it's good to be back. Thank you everyone for joining us over there in YouTube land. And that's it.
Yeah, this was a short one. Yeah, definitely felt good to just have a little talk and we can close it out.
Yeah, stretch our feet and get our feet wet in the water, but we'll definitely be back. We'll be back with some more topics.
Yeah, and we want to get more people on here too. We would definitely hear some stories of what people are doing out there nowadays.
As long as we're melting your minds, that's all we really want. This is Chimp and John signing out. Good night.
Awesome.